it's time to talk about long-term BMW S1000RR and our M1000RR. We've now owned these bikes for the S1000RR we've had since the end of January, and the M1000RR was July of last year. So let's talk about what it's like owning these bikes for that long and the extremes we put them through, and overall BMW reliability in general. Why don't we just get into that too? Now, to let you guys know, we've owned the S1000RR and M1000RR since both their inceptions in 2010 for the S1000RR and 2021 for the M1000RR, both United States, of course. 2009 was European release. Since then, we've had over a dozen of those models in every single generation you can imagine. And also we've had two 21 M1000RRs plus our 23 M1000RR that we have now. All right, now let's talk about the issues gen by gen. The 10 through 14, pretty solid bikes, honestly. The only issue we had here was in 2012, there was a crank bearing issue, and that issue was resolved by BMW. They did fix it. There was also a TPS, or the throttle positioning sensor issue, and there was also a throttle cable issue. Even on the Gen 1, there was a life of the cam for about 30,000 miles. It recommends you swap out the cams after 30,000 miles. Really, the 10 through 14, pretty stout bike when it came out. Now let's go to the 15-16, which is different than the 10 through 14. It was the first major facelift for the BMW S1000RR. And on the 15 through 16, our issue was going to be overheating. We had an issue where the head bolts, for some reason, were becoming loose or were loose from the factory, and it was creating an overheating issue on the bikes. On my personal bike, for example, I did have the issue at some point, and I resolved it with head studs myself. The 17 through 19 bikes, they are solid. That was the best ECU of that generation. It was the best electronics of that generation, the best layout of that generation, and really I don't have any complaints about that bike at all. It's really overall a great bike. That one is solid. So let me kind of go over what people complain about with this generation S1000RR, the 2023 or the 2020 Plus, for example, because they're all kind of the same. The weep hole issue that we've been seeing, the BMW dealership I spoke about, so they saw it they saw it twice in an entire year of servicing, but I've seen some people have more of those issues than others. There's also shift cam failures. We're seeing around 40,000 miles in those bikes. Typically, I mean, no one's really getting those bikes around 40,000 miles, but the shift cam is a wear and tear item technically because it does move. It does have a whole mechanical piece to it, how it shifts around. The 20 through 22 models had the ignition coil issue, where people were burning ignition coils. The bike sounds like a WRX. Those were initially an issue with the first batch of coils. BMW was good. They replaced a lot of those and those customer issues there. The new issues that people are seeing these days with the coil packs usually is a customer provided issue, meaning they're rev bombing the bike or doing something they really shouldn't be doing. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone's doing something bad that has this issue. It just means for the vast majority, some people are doing things they shouldn't be doing with the bike. The 20 through 24 models all have the exact same short block, the bottom end, or the rotating assembly, with the same piston, same rod, same crank, everything like that. And that's where we're seeing the issue where it's punching a hole through the front of the block, basically.
Hey everyone, I'm Bill. I'm with Kelly Moto TV. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Buttonwillow Raceway. And well, let's say goodbye to the 23 BMW M1000R. Apparently, I threw a rod through the motor. And welcome back. The all-new 23 BMW M1000R is back on the road, and I have to give a huge props and a huge thank you not only to A&S but BMW Motorrad USA and Nate Kern for making this motor happen so fast. It's been just over 2 weeks since the catastrophic failure of the motor, and we're back on the road breaking the new motor in.
That issue is stemming from a little more complex things that I'm seeing than just basic, oh, this happened, or the oil, this or that. It seems like it's a mechanical failure. BMW just doesn't tell people to kick rocks. They do a full investigation on there. If they find something like you've unlocked your own bike, you've been rev bombing your bike, it's been over revved a few times, and they see that it's basically abuse on the bike, they're going to deny it. I've also seen BMW cover complete engines quite a few times, give them brand new engines, even with our tuning on it. So BMW, they do stand behind their stuff. And as far as the M1000RR goes, it's a oil burning issue people keep on talking about. That and this new rod knock issue I'm hearing people talk about, and both these issues I believe are user-induced. The oiling issue is going to be from a break-in, and maybe BMW didn't relay it to the dealer how important it is to break in something like a moly forged piston that only has 2 rings as opposed to those 3 rings that the S1000RR comes with. The piston rings, and you only have 2 of them, you got to break it in a certain way, and that's a race engine. And if it's not broken in correctly, you're just taking it back and forth to Starbucks. It's not going to break in correctly. It's going to burn oil. And the more oil you burn, or the more you're seeing in the combustion chamber, it lowers your octane level. And the problem when you lower your octane level is now it's starting to knock, it's starting to detonate. It causes other issues, let's put it that way. So make sure you're breaking in your M1000RRs correctly. Like I said, for the past 3 that we've had, we haven't seen any oiling issues or any oil burning issues on our bikes whatsoever. The rod knock coming from the M1000RR, I believe, is from people just not taking seriously the break-in period and really beating the bike up, like rev bombing it, putting in a dyno right after an unlock, and the unlock was too early. Things of that nature I'm seeing, and that's what is causing these issues that I'm seeing with the rod knocking.
Oh dear. Start it up again.
I think that's broken.
And your machine is not tuned or anything in any way, shape or form?
That's a stock one.
Honestly, overall, the bikes are very reliable. You're not going to have much of any of an issue with these bikes if you do have them yourself. The issues that I do see are few and far in between, and it isn't more than any other manufacturer out there. I've seen Honda have engine issues, actual internal engine issues. Kawasaki seen the same thing. Ducati has so many recalls, they almost didn't fit my mailbox. But overall, all those manufacturers made good on their product, and everything gets sorted. The issues we have seen on these bikes, if they're catastrophic, for example, like the S1000RR or the M1000, these are happening well below a 1,000-mile marker that I've seen. I mean, of course, there's exceptions to every rule, but for the vast majority, it's something that you start this bike up right when you grab it, it's making some weird noises, and then you just keep on pushing on it, and then it lets go somewhere. So these bikes are usually problem childs right from the get-go if they do have some issues associated with them. But let's get back to the overall review for the year and long-term review of the S1000RR. Now, like I said, we've had this thing for over a year now. So why did we get the 23? Well, we had a 2020, right? So why get a 23 if we already had a 2020? Well, the 23 comes with a few other things that the 2020 didn't have. So it has a new software, of course. The way the logic and the ECU is completely different. They took a lot of stuff from the M1000 and crushed it into the S1000. It has a new cylinder head. It has the M1000 airbox. It has the M1000 velocity stacks. It has a lot of things they ported over to this bike, and we needed to get one in our hands just to flash it, test it, make sure everything was 100% on those bikes. And we've put these things through an unimaginable amount of stress, and we really beat these things up, but we actually stick to factory recommended oil changes, factory recommended services. We don't want to see our customers have a failure, so when we test something, we really test the hell out of it until either something breaks or we just get a thumbs up. And we haven't had anything break on these bikes. That's how good they've been to us. So I'll attest that after we get the break-in done, we really dyno these things. We get them on the road. We beat them up really crazy on the road and spirited riding. We go to closed course circuits and we do 200 miles an hour for extended periods of time. We really put these bikes through their paces, including even shift sector and a few other events. We really push these bikes to their limit as far as the engine goes. And we haven't noticed any adverse effects from doing that over the dozen plus bikes that we've had. And I can attest this to the break-in procedure that we do on the bikes. We do this in every single S1000 or M1000 we have. You can do it on every single gasoline engine you've got typically, or you buy. And going off of the recommended oil and oil filter, like I said, like you don't want to have a K&N filter, for example, like an oil filter. Those things are absolute trash. In fact, some tracks won't even let you on the track with the K&N oil filter. I'd only recommend a factory oil filter, a factory crush washer every single time you change your oil, and factory oil. I also use factory oil. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to use 300V. Cool, 300V, that's awesome. You need to really change your frequency of oil changes if you're using 300V, because that is not an oil that you should use on a street bike. That is a race oil that is not going to do well on a street bike if you leave it for extended periods of time. For the intervals that we use personally for our oil, we'll go 3,000 miles or 6 months, whatever comes first. So if we go 3,000 miles first within 1 month, change it. We go 6 months and there's no miles on the bikes, we change it. So 3,000 miles or 6 months, whatever comes first. And that's if we're just lightly riding the bikes. If we're really beating these things up at the track, for example, or I go to shift sector and I do a half-mile event or something like that, I'm using race gas like MR12, I will dump the oil right there. So I'll have maybe 10 miles on the oil, I will dump it. And the funny part is you can actually smell the fuel in that oil. So yeah, it's a good idea to change your oil more frequently when you're doing track days. If you're one of those people that's spirited canyon riding all the time, yes, you want to change your oil a lot, very frequently. And that's going to cause the bearings and everything like that to kind of live longer. If you get your oil above a certain temperature, for example, it's really hot, you get the motor really hot, you're changing the life of that oil in half every single time it breaches a certain temperature, every single time. So if you're at the track, you do a track day, for example, dump the oil out. Do new oil right after that track day if you're just going to ride the bike around, if you're going to let it sit. Change the oil out before you go to the next track day. If you're a racer and you're mechanically over-revving your bike, that's also not a good thing. Mechanical over-revs are going to cause your engine to fail. That's really going to reduce a lot of the effects that people are having for engine issues. For any of you that are on the fence about getting a BMW, I would get it. I have ridden so many bikes, and if you guys haven't seen our channel, check it out. I review bikes, that's what I do. So I've thrown my leg over more bikes than most people have, and I can tell you, these BMWs are Swiss Army knives. It's a comfortable bike to ride. It's comfortable in any situation almost. Ergonomically, we're talking cruise control, we're talking heated grips. On a bike that produces 200 wheel horsepower through a stock exhaust system, this is ridiculous and almost unheard of. If I were to tell you this 10 years ago in the motorcycle community, I would have gotten laughed out of the room, basically. These bikes are insane, and when the 2010 S1000RR came out, it changed the game as far as power goes and really kind of shook up everyone in the whole market. I mean, you can get this bike for $19,500 out, well, I don't know if outdoor. MSRP here, we're at Long Beach BMW, under 20,000 bucks. You can get your leg over one of these bikes today. Of course, the one shown here that we have is maxed out. I think it's about probably about $26,000 for that one. The M1000 is sitting at a base form, which I can only buy the competition here in the States, and that's $40,000, and then you add the parts and stuff on top of that. Do I think it's worth going from an S1000 to M1000? If you got the money, absolutely. Absolutely. And anyone that will ride both of these bikes back to back will say that is a different bike. It's totally changed. There's nothing the same about the M1000 and S1000. That's the funny part. But a lot of people won't get the opportunity, unfortunately, to ride a 23 S1000R. I mean, there's only a few of them, and who's going to let some random person ride their 23 M1000, right? As far as rideability goes, ever since day one to this day, it just seems like it's just gotten better. I mean, of course, we tweak these bikes, we change, and we put audible traction control on both of these bikes now. I can also still confidently say, out of all the bikes I ride, these two bikes are still my favorite bikes to ride. The quick shifter on these BMWs is something that's unparalleled from any other maker. I don't care what bike you got. There is not a quick shifter better than this BMW. It's so smooth. It's so easy to deal with, and it shifts insanely fast when you want it to, but when you're down low on the RPM and you're just using a quick shifter at 2,000, 3,000 RPM, it's so smooth. And the 23 M1000RR is the smoothest quick shifter I've ever felt in my life, let's put it that way. I've never felt anything that comes close. So people that want these aftermarket shifters on these things, et cetera, they don't need that. It's an amazing bike right off the bat. BMW has come such a long way. I mean, we're talking, these are wideband control bikes. The electronics in these bikes are absolutely insane, to the point where if I was going to compare these bikes to cars, I would say the BMW is more like a McLaren. It's precise, it's sharp, it's robotic, it's like a scalpel. Like, it almost feels like it's doing everything for you almost. You can make it that precise, or you can turn everything off and it'll murder you if you wanted to. I mean, the shift cam on these bikes is so good that it makes more torque than a Ducati V4S, which has 1103 cc's. I mean, that's a bigger engine than this guy. But because of the shift cam technology, it's making more torque. The wideband system allows us to do full-time closed loop, meaning this bike is tuning itself. Now, they don't do that from the factory. And our tuning allows us to do it full time, meaning it's always doing that. So if you ever put like an aftermarket slip on or something like that, it will adjust for all of those changes automatically, which is a great thing to have. They also added on this slide control in the 23 S1000RR. Now that's a pretty cool feature. The tire's starting to slide. It'll let you kind of slide through the turn depending on how it is. I'm not brave enough to try it, but Nate Kern swears by it when we spoke with him. He says that it's an amazing feature. I'm not brave enough to back it into a corner like that to see what it does, but if he says it's good, it's good. And not to mention just the way the TFT is, I've never seen a bike that has a more smooth TFT that has, it's just an amazing display. When I first saw it, and I went back to my Ducati because I had a 2018 V4S, I looked at it and went, wow, this is already dated. Now that the BMW comes out with the 2020, my 2018 V4S is still dated, and they still have the same screen on these Ducatis this day. They need to really update those things as well. And I don't think every manufacturer just needs to play catch up with BMW as far as electronics go and ease of use. Now, putting thousands of miles on both of these bikes, I can confidently say the bike is reliable. The bike is extremely fun to ride. All right, guys, let's do a quick recap of the video here. When you get your bike from BMW, brand new, make sure you do a complete and proper break-in. That means you're varying RPMs, you're varying lows, and follow the video here on the top right if you want to see how we break in our bikes. This is especially important on the M1000RR, and keep in mind any of these bikes that have issues are going to have issues basically within the first 1,000 miles, any major catastrophic issues. They're going to have some telltale signs immediately. Make sure you have your dealer unlock the bike. So just take it to the dealer, have them do the whole process. Make sure you use OEM fluids and filters. We use BMW oil, we use BMW oil filters, and this is on our bikes that we race. Just make sure you change your frequency of services depending on how you're using your motorcycle. If you are doing your own fluid changes or oil changes, make sure you document anything that may be useful if you have some kind of damage down the road, and the dealer may ask you to provide evidence that you've been changing your own oil. Make sure you pick a dealership that aligns with your best interest. If you're into racing, see that they have a racing team that they sponsor. Just make sure they're on the same page as you. If your engine is having signs of issues, take it directly to the dealer. Don't just keep riding it. Don't just keep trying to push through it and hoping it'll fix itself. It's not going to fix itself. Take it to the dealer, have them check it out. It's free. Also, make sure you guys are treating your bikes well. Make sure you're not rev bombing the bike or doing anything like mechanically over revving it, whether it's on accident or on purpose. Just try to stay away from that stuff, because pushing past the limiter is an easy way to avoid your warranty. And I think that's going to do it for our long-term review. Usually people are on bikes doing these reviews. I thought it'd be cool to kind of do a setting where I'm sitting here talking about the bikes with them behind me, and then kind of pepper in some shots of me beating the hell out of the bike or the bike's getting beat up. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys want to see more videos like this, me talking, or if you guys want to see a full comparison between what the differences are between the S1000 and the M1000R, I will do a full comprehensive video for you guys and describe every single nut and bolt that's different if you want. But you guys gotta want it, so let me know. I think that's gonna do it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.